The ballroom glittered like a jewelry box, all crystal chandeliers and champagne towers. 200 guests in designer evening wear pretended to care about children's education while checking who might be worth networking with. Nathan Hayes stood against the far wall, blue suit just a shade too worn at the cuffs, eyes systematically scanning the crowd. 3 years as a driver for wealthy clients had taught him one thing. The rich didn't see the people who served them, which made them easy to read, easy to anticipate. Nathan's gaze found Olivia Cartwright across the room, white silk dress catching the light as she navigated between clusters of admirers and opportunists. 29 years old and 6 months into running Cartwright Industries after her father's sudden death. The press called her the reluctant billionaire, a label she seemed to despise based on the slight tightening around her eyes whenever reporters used it. 3 senior executives hovered nearby, clearly keeping tabs on her. Richard Bartlett, the silver-haired CFO who'd been with the company for 15 years, watched her with the careful assessment of someone evaluating an investment. David Sutton, head of acquisitions, younger and hungrier, smiled too broadly at whatever she was saying. Movement in the service corridor caught Nathan's attention. A waiter he didn't recognize emerged, shoulders held with unnatural stiffness. Wrong. In Nathan's experience, waitstaff at these events moved with practiced fluidity, nearly invisible as they refreshed drinks and cleared plates. This one moved with purpose, eyes fixed on Olivia as she accepted a fresh glass of champagne from another server. The man's gaze never wavered from the glass as he angled through the crowd, positioning himself to intercept. A cold certainty settled in Nathan's stomach. He'd seen that focused intensity before, in people with violent intent. Nathan pushed off the wall, weaving through clusters of guests. 4 strides, 3. The strange waiter reached Olivia first, offering to take her half-empty glass. She smiled politely, accepting a new flute from his tray. The champagne lifted toward her lips. No time. Nathan closed the final distance, one hand catching her wrist before the glass touched her mouth. The other slid behind her neck. He pulled her forward and pressed his lips against hers, felt her start to resist, then deliberately parted her lips with his own. The champagne transferred from her mouth to his in that forced moment of intimacy. The bitter chemical burn hit his tongue instantly. Olivia shoved him back, eyes wide with shock and anger, hand already rising to slap him. The room fell silent, 200 witnesses to what appeared to be her driver losing his mind. But Nathan barely registered their stares. The poison spread through his mouth, numbing his tongue, burning down his throat. I just saved your life, and now I'm dying in your place. The thought flashed through his mind as Olivia's palm connected with his cheek, snapping his head sideways. What the hell is wrong with you? Her voice cut through the murmuring crowd, fury radiating from every syllable. Nathan grabbed her arm, fingers probably pressing too hard as the first wave of dizziness hit him. He tried to speak, found his tongue uncooperative, the words slurring. Need to talk. Now. Something in his eyes must have registered, the dilating pupils, the growing panic, because Olivia's expression shifted. Imperceptible to anyone else, but Nathan had spent 2 months studying her reactions. She allowed him to guide her toward the exit, though she maintained the appearance of controlling the interaction for the benefit of onlookers. The heavy doors closed behind them, muting the scandalized whispers. The hallway stretched empty before them, gold-framed mirrors multiplying their reflections into infinity. Nathan leaned against the wall, fighting the growing numbness in his extremities. You have 10 seconds before I call security. Her voice had dropped to a dangerous pitch, controlled fury beneath the polished exterior. Nathan forced his increasingly uncooperative mouth to form words. Your champagne. Poisoned. The waiter, something wrong about him, didn't have time to knock it away. Olivia stared as though he'd started speaking in tongues. That's insane. You're telling me you kissed me because you thought someone poisoned my drink? Do you hear yourself? But uncertainty crept into her final words. She was smart, smarter than most people gave her credit for. 6 months running a multi-billion-dollar company without a single major misstep. She knew how to read people, and now she was reading him. Look at me. Nathan stepped under one of the hallway sconces, letting the light illuminate what was happening to him. His lips had begun to swell, angry red blisters forming at the corners of his mouth. His left eye watered uncontrollably, the vision blurring. "Oh my God!" Olivia reached toward his face, then pulled back as though afraid to touch him. "We need to get you to a hospital." Nathan shook his head, immediately regretted the movement as the hallway tilted alarmingly. "Not yet." The waited. "Did you see where he went?" She wasn't listening, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling 911. Nathan caught her wrist, gentler this time. "If you do that, whoever poisoned you will disappear. They'll know it didn't work. They'll try again." His vision was definitely deteriorating, shadows creeping in from the periphery. "I need you to trust me for 5 minutes. Can you do that?" Olivia studied him, weighing options he couldn't see. Finally, she nodded. 5 minutes. "Then we're going to the hospital. And you're going to tell me who you really are because drivers don't talk like you're talking." They found the waiter's jacket stuffed in a trash can near the service entrance. No ID, just the hotel's catering uniform and a name tag that read David. Olivia pulled up the hotel's staff directory on her phone, scrolling quickly. "There's no David working the event tonight. All the waiters are from the regular catering company. They've worked these events for years." She looked up at Nathan, really looked at him, seeing beyond the driver's uniform to whatever remained of the man beneath. "You knew before the champagne. What are you?" Nathan leaned against the wall, fighting to stay upright as the tremors began working through his hands. "I used to work for the Secret Service. Presidential detail. I was good at reading threats. Reading people." He swallowed, tasting copper and chemicals. "I left 3 years ago when my wife died. Car accident. Had a daughter to raise alone. The hours didn't work anymore. It was the truth. Or close enough." He omitted the part about spending 18 months investigating his wife's death, finding nothing concrete but too many patterns that added up to murder. Left out that he'd taken this specific job because Olivia's father had reached out 2 weeks before his death, saying he needed someone with Nathan's background, someone outside the family, someone he could trust, then died before explaining why. Olivia processed this with the same focused intensity she brought to board meetings. "So my father hired you directly, not the company." Nathan nodded, each movement requiring more concentration. "He called me, said he needed a driver he could trust, someone with specific skills. He died before we could meet in person." Something flickered across Olivia's face. "Too quick to read. He never mentioned you." She pulled up her phone, fingers moving rapidly. "I'm looking at your hiring records. You were processed through HR like everyone else. Standard background check, standard contract." That's what he wanted. Nathan felt consciousness beginning to slip, his body shutting down systems to fight the poison. He didn't want anyone knowing I was anything other than a driver. "Olivia, I need you to call someone. Not the hospital. Not yet." He recited a phone number, made her repeat it back twice. "Tell them Nathan Hayes drank approximately 2 ounces of poisoned champagne at the Cartwright Gala. Tell them I need Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She'll know what to do." Olivia was already dialing, her expression tightly controlled. No hysterics, no panic, just action. Nathan respected that. She was her father's daughter in the ways that mattered. The call connected, and she relayed the information exactly as he'd instructed, then listened intently to whoever was on the other end. "They say 20 minutes. They're sending someone." She knelt beside him. When had he ended up on the floor? And took his hand. Her fingers were cold, or maybe his were burning up. "Stay with me. Tell me about your daughter." Smart distraction. Keep him talking. Keep him conscious. Nathan tried to smile, felt his face crack. "Sophie, she's 7, 2nd grade, wants to be a veterinarian." The words came slower now, his tongue thick and clumsy. "She has her mother's eyes, brown with gold flecks, laughs like her too, loud and sudden, like she can't help it." "What happened to your wife?" Olivia's voice had softened, gentleness replacing the sharp edges he'd grown accustomed to hearing in the office. "Car accident. 3 years ago, I was at work. She was driving home from her sister's. A truck ran a red light. All true, all incomplete." Olivia's grip tightened on his hand. "I'm sorry," she meant it. He could hear the weight of understanding in her voice, the recognition that came from losing someone too soon. Her father had been 62, healthy and active. Heart attack at his desk on a Wednesday afternoon. The kind of death that looked natural but felt wrong. Nathan had read the autopsy report, not officially, but he still had contacts in useful places. Nothing suspicious, nothing provable, just like his wife. The door at the end of the hallway opened, and Nathan struggled to focus on the approaching figure. Dark suit, medical bag, purposeful stride. Dr. Sarah Mitchell looked exactly as she had 3 years ago when she treated him for a concussion after a training incident. She knelt beside him, all professional efficiency, checking his pupils, his pulse, his breathing. "What was it?" she asked Olivia. "I don't know. I didn't drink it." Sarah looked at Nathan. Symptoms? He tried to list them, but his thoughts scattered like mercury. Metallic taste, burning, throat closing, vision blurring, numbness spreading. Sarah was already pulling supplies from her bag, setting up an IV with practiced speed. Could be several things. Cyanide, strychnine, arsenic compound. Won't know until we get labs, but we'll assume worst case and treat accordingly. She looked at Olivia. "I need you to tell me everything about that drink, where it came from, who handled it, anything you remember." While Sarah worked, Olivia described the champagne tower at the center of the room, the waiter appearing at her elbow with a glass from his tray. She hadn't thought anything of it. Why would she? It was her charity gala, her guests. Nathan felt the IV bite into his arm, cool liquid flooding his system. Sarah was explaining something about activated charcoal and chelating agents, but the words blurred together. He caught fragments. Blood work. Observation. Lucky. Lucky. He'd stolen poison from a woman's mouth, and she was calling him lucky. From a certain angle, she was right. If he hadn't been watching, if he hadn't recognized the threat, if he'd been a normal driver doing a normal job, Olivia would be the one on the floor right now. The thought cleared his head momentarily. He grabbed Sarah's wrist, forced the words out. The waiter, gray suit, brown hair, scar on his left hand. Someone needs to find him. Sarah looked at Olivia. "Call hotel security, lock down all exits." Olivia was already moving, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp with authority. Nathan heard her ordering someone to seal the building, check security footage, find a waiter who didn't exist on any staff list. She was good in a crisis. He'd known that already, but seeing it up close was different. Sarah finished with the IV and sat back on her heels. "You're stable for now. We've bought some time. But Nathan, you need a hospital. Real facilities, real labs. This is field medicine, not treatment." He nodded, the world spinning. 10 minutes. Need 10 minutes. He looked past Sarah to where Olivia was pacing, still on the phone, her white dress probably worth more than his car. "She's in danger. If I go to the hospital, she's alone." "She has security," Sarah pointed out. Nathan shook his head, regretted the movement. Her regular security called in sick this morning. Convenient timing. "I'm all she has right now." He could see Sarah weighing it, the doctor's oath against the reality of the situation. Finally, she nodded. 10 minutes. "Then you're going, conscious or not." She stood, walked to Olivia, said something Nathan couldn't hear. Olivia's expression hardened, her boardroom face settling into place. She ended her call and returned to where Nathan was propped against the wall. Hotel security found the jacket, but no waiter. "They're checking footage now." She crouched down, bringing them eye to eye. "Nathan, tell me the truth, all of it. My father hired you because he thought someone was trying to kill him, didn't he?" "No point lying now." Nathan nodded. "He called me 2 weeks before he died, said he'd discovered something. Someone in the company was embezzling, hiding it through offshore accounts and shell corporations. He'd narrowed it down to 2 people, but couldn't prove which one. He wanted me close to you as protection while he figured it out." Olivia's jaw tightened. "He died before he could tell you who." The question carried accusation beneath it. Another nod. "And you think whoever killed him is now trying to kill me?" It wasn't a question. She understood the pattern, saw the thread connecting her father's sudden death to tonight's champagne. "I think you know something you don't know you know," Nathan said. "Something your father might have told you, or something in his files. And someone's afraid you'll figure it out." "Who?" The single word carried the weight of 6 months of grief and confusion. Nathan wished he had an answer. "Your father mentioned 2 names, Richard Bartlett, your CFO, and David Sutton, head of acquisitions." He watched her face carefully. "Do either of those names mean anything to you?" Olivia stood abruptly, resumed pacing. "Richard's been with the company for 15 years. He was my father's college roommate. David's newer, maybe 5 years, but he's brilliant. Brought in some of our biggest deals. She stopped, turned back to Nathan. You think one of them poisoned my champagne? I think one of them hired someone to poison your champagne, Nathan corrected. The waiter was a professional. The way he moved, the way he positioned himself, the way he disappeared. That's not amateur hour. He could feel the medication working, pushing back against the poison, giving him enough clarity to think. We need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere private, and then we need to look at your father's files. Olivia pulled out her phone again. I have copies of everything at my apartment. Complete digital archive of his computer, emails, calendar for the last 2 years. She was already texting. I'm telling my assistant I had a family emergency, canceling the rest of my evening. She looked at Nathan. Can you walk? He could try. Sarah helped him to his feet, kept a steadying hand on his elbow as the hallway performed a slow roll. This is a terrible idea, she informed them both. You should be in a hospital, and she should be surrounded by actual security professionals. Noted, Nathan said. He took a step, then another, forcing his legs to remember how walking worked. Olivia moved to his other side, lending support without being asked. Together, the three of them made their way to the service elevator, avoiding the ballroom and its 200 witnesses to Nathan's very public indiscretion. In the parking garage, Olivia's town car sat exactly where Nathan had left it 3 hours earlier. He fumbled for the keys, but Olivia took them from his shaking hands. I'll drive. You've done enough for one night. The drive to Olivia's apartment took 15 minutes through downtown traffic. Nathan spent it fighting nausea and watching the side mirrors for anyone following them. Sarah sat in the back, monitoring his vitals and muttering medical opinions about stubborn patients. Olivia drove with the same focused intensity she brought to everything else, weaving through traffic with practiced ease. You're a good driver, Nathan observed, the words slightly slurred. Olivia glanced at him, something like humor flickering across her face. I didn't always have drivers. Used to race cars in college, drove my father crazy. They pulled into the underground garage of a building with better security than most government facilities. Olivia used a key card to access a private elevator that opened directly into her penthouse. The doors slid open onto a space that looked nothing like what Nathan expected. No gold fixtures or crystal chandeliers, just clean lines, comfortable furniture, and walls covered in photographs. Family pictures, he realized. Olivia with her father at various ages. Olivia with a woman who had to be her mother, same high cheekbones and determined eyes. Olivia graduating college, cutting ribbons, shaking hands with dignitaries. Surprised? Olivia asked, catching his expression. People expect billionaires to live like movie villains. I just wanted a home. She led them to a study off the main living area, walls lined with bookshelves, a desk that held 3 large monitors. Sarah made Nathan sit in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent, while she checked his vitals again. Pulse still elevated, blood pressure dropping, pupils reactive but sluggish. You're stabilizing, she said, but you're not out of danger. I'm staying until we figure out exactly what you ingested. Olivia was already at the desk, fingers flying across keyboards, pulling up files and folders. My father's digital archive, everything from his computer, his phone, his tablet. I had it all pulled after he died. She looked back at Nathan. I went through most of it. Financial reports, emails, meeting notes. Nothing jumped out as suspicious. Nathan pushed himself out of the chair, ignored Sarah's protest, and moved to stand behind Olivia. Show me his calendar. Last 2 months before he died. The calendar filled the center screen, color-coded blocks representing meetings and appointments. Nathan scanned the entries, looking for patterns. Lots of meetings with Richard Bartlett, the CFO. Weekly dinners with someone listed only as DS, David Sutton, probably. Monthly board meetings, daily briefings with department heads. And then, 2 weeks before his death, a single entry that stood out. JK confidential audit, off-site. Nathan pointed at it. Who's JK? Olivia zoomed in on the entry, frowned. I don't know. There's no location, no follow-up, nothing in his emails about it. An audit? Sarah said from behind them. That's what you do when you suspect financial irregularities. Nathan nodded. He was gathering evidence. Probably hired an outside auditor to look at the books quietly. He scrolled through the following days, looking for any mention of JK or audit results. Nothing. The entry just sat there, isolated and unexplained. And then, 8 days later, Olivia's father was dead. "We need to find Jake," Nathan said. "They might have the proof your father was looking for." Olivia was already searching, pulling up company contacts, vendor lists, consultant registries. "There's no one with those initials in any of our current files." She bit her lip, thinking, "Wait, my father kept a personal address book. Old school, paper and pen. He said some things shouldn't be digital." She left the study, returned a moment later with a leather-bound book, pages worn soft from use. She flipped through it quickly, running her finger down columns of handwritten names and numbers. Here, James Kirkland, forensic accountant, Boston address. Nathan felt something click into place. Call him now. Olivia reached for her phone, then hesitated. If someone's willing to poison me at a public event, they might be monitoring my phone. Smart and paranoid. Nathan approved. Use mine. He pulled out a basic prepaid cell, the kind that couldn't be traced or tracked. I keep it for emergencies. Olivia took the phone, dialed the number from her father's book. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. She left a careful message identifying herself, saying she needed to discuss an audit he'd done for her father, asking him to call back at this number. When she hung up, the 3 of them stood in silence, the weight of unanswered questions filling the room. Finally, Sarah spoke. "You need to call the police. This is attempted murder. Let professionals handle it." Olivia shook her head. "If we call the police, whoever did this will lawyer up. We'll never prove anything. My father dies of a heart attack. I almost drink poisoned champagne." A forensic accountant goes silent. Without hard evidence, it's all just coincidence. "She's right," Nathan said. Sarah gave him a look that suggested he was being an idiot, but she didn't argue further. Olivia started pacing, her earlier composure cracking at the edges. "My father knew. He knew someone was stealing from the company, and he knew they were dangerous enough to kill him. And he tried to protect me by hiring you." She turned to Nathan, eyes bright with unshed tears. "But he died anyway. And now someone's tried to kill me. What am I supposed to do? Who can I trust?" Nathan wanted to tell her it would be okay, that they'd figure it out, that justice would prevail. But he'd been down this road before. He knew how hard it was to prove murder when it was made to look like natural causes, knew how evidence disappeared, witnesses changed their stories, powerful people stayed protected. "You trust the evidence," he said. "We find what your father found. We prove the embezzlement, and we prove whoever did it was willing to kill to keep it hidden." The prepaid phone rang, sudden and loud in the quiet room. Olivia grabbed it, answered. "Hello? Yes, this is Olivia Cartwright. Thank you for calling back." She listened, her face going pale. "I see. No, I understand. Is there any way we could meet? It's urgent. More listening. Tomorrow morning." "Yes, I'll be there. Thank you." She ended the call, looked at Nathan. "James Kirkland says my father hired him to audit the company's offshore accounts. He found evidence of systematic embezzlement going back 7 years. Nearly 50 million moved through shell corporations and false vendors." "Did he tell your father?" Nathan asked. Olivia nodded. "He sent his report 3 days before my father died. Complete breakdown of the fraud with documentation. He says my father called him after receiving it, said he was going to confront the person responsible. That was the last time they spoke." She sat heavily in the desk chair. "He also said someone broke into his office last month. They didn't take anything, but his files were disturbed. He's been scared ever since." Nathan's mind was already working through the implications. "Your father confronted the embezzler. The embezzler killed him and made it look like a heart attack. But your father was careful. He must have hidden copies of the audit somewhere. Insurance in case something happened." He looked at Olivia. "Where would your father hide something he wanted to keep absolutely secret?" Olivia thought for a long moment. "There's a safe deposit box at First National downtown. I have a key, but I've never opened it. My father told me once that it contained important documents, but only to access it if something happened to him." She met Nathan's eyes. "I thought he was being paranoid. After he died, I couldn't face going through his things. I told myself there was time." "We go tomorrow," Nathan said. "First thing in the morning. Get whatever's in that box." Sarah cleared her throat. "Tomorrow, Nathan goes to a real hospital for real treatment. He's lucky to be conscious right now. Nathan ignored her, kept his focus on Olivia. Who else knows about the safe deposit box? Olivia frowned. I don't know. Maybe his lawyer. Maybe Richard. They were close. My father might have mentioned it. The thought landed like ice water. If Richard Bartlett was the embezzler, and if he knew about the safe deposit box, they were already running out of time. Nathan pulled out his phone, his real phone this time, and made a call. Jack, it's Nathan Hayes. I need a favor. Jack Morrison had been his partner in the Secret Service, the one person he'd stayed in contact with after leaving. I need overnight protection. 2 people, high-risk situation. Can you spare anyone? A pause while Jack asked questions Nathan couldn't fully answer. Personal job, off the books. I'll explain later. Another pause. Thanks, I owe you. He hung up, turned to Olivia. 2 agents are coming. They'll stay here tonight. Keep watch. Sarah stays too. Keeps me alive. Tomorrow we get the audit files and figure out who killed your father. Olivia looked like she wanted to argue, then simply nodded. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by exhaustion and grief and fear. Nathan recognized the look. He'd seen it in the mirror for months after his wife died. The agents arrived within an hour, professional and efficient. Nathan knew them both from his old life, trusted them to do the job without asking questions he couldn't answer. They secured the apartment, checked sight lines and entry points, settled in for a long night. Sarah made Nathan lie down on the couch, hooked him up to a portable monitor, and told him to sleep if he could. Olivia disappeared into her bedroom, and Nathan heard the quiet sound of crying through the closed door. He stared at the ceiling, feeling the poison still working through his system, slower now, but persistent. His thoughts kept circling back to the ballroom. That moment when he'd seen the wrong pattern in the crowd. He'd acted on instinct, muscle memory from years of training. But it was more than that. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he'd known this was coming. Known that the wild was never just about driving a car. His wife used to tell him he was terrible at being normal. She'd meant it as a joke, but she was right. Normal people didn't see threats in every shadow. Normal people didn't carry prepaid phones for emergencies. Normal people didn't kiss billionaire heiresses to steal poison from their mouths. Morning came gray and cold, rain streaking the windows. Nathan woke to Sarah checking his vitals and declaring him miraculously not dead. You should be in a hospital, she said for the 10th time. Noted, he replied, for the 10th time. Olivia emerged from her bedroom looking pale but determined, dressed in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer suits. She'd pulled her hair back in a simple ponytail, and without makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more human. They took Nathan's car instead of the town car, borrowed from a friend and registered to a false name, just in case someone was watching. The bank was downtown, an old stone building with brass fixtures and that particular smell of money and marble. Olivia signed the access forms, and they were escorted to a private room lined with safe deposit boxes. She used her key, and the attendant used his, and the long metal box slid out of its slot with a whisper of steel on steel. Inside was a manila envelope, thick with papers. Olivia opened it with shaking hands. Financial documents spilled out, page after page of bank transfers and shell company registrations and offshore accounts. And on top, a handwritten letter in her father's distinctive scrawl. Olivia, it began, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have seen it coming. Nathan read over her shoulder as Olivia's hands shook harder. I discovered that Richard Bartlett has been embezzling from the company for 7 years. He's been clever about it, hiding the money in layers of false transactions and offshore accounts. I have proof, all of it in this envelope. I was going to confront him tomorrow, but I wanted you to have this insurance first. If something happens to me, take this to the authorities. Don't trust anyone in the company. And please forgive me for putting you in danger. I thought I could handle this quietly. I was wrong. I love you, Dad. The room was silent except for the sound of Olivia's breathing, sharp and quick. Richard, she whispered. He was my father's best friend. I've known him my whole life. Nathan took the envelope, checked the documents. Bank statements showing transfers from Cartwright Industries to various shell companies. Corporate registrations in Richard Bartlett's name buried under layers of legal paperwork. Email printouts discussing the movement of funds. James Kirkland's forensic report. 70 pages detailing the systematic fraud. It was all there, everything they needed. "We take this to the FBI," Nathan said. "Let them handle it from here." But Olivia was shaking her head, her face hard. "Richard has connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. My father knew that. That's why he was trying to handle it quietly." She looked at Nathan. "We need a confession, something undeniable, something he can't lawyer his way out of." It was a terrible idea. Nathan knew it was a terrible idea, but he also knew she was right. Men like Richard Bartlett didn't go down easily. They had expensive lawyers and political favors, and the ability to make evidence disappear. "How?" he asked. Olivia's jaw set in that determined line Nathan was beginning to recognize. "We make him think he won. Tell him I found my father's files and I want to make a deal. Sell him my silence for a price he can't refuse." She pulled out her phone, the prepaid one, and started typing. "I'll send him a message. Ask for a meeting somewhere private where we can talk." Nathan caught her wrist. "If you do this, you're painting a target on yourself. He's already tried to kill you once." "Good," Olivia said coldly. "Let him try again. This time we'll be ready." She finished typing, sent the message before Nathan could stop her. His phone buzzed almost immediately. Richard's response was brief. "My office, 8 p.m. tonight, come alone." Olivia showed Nathan the screen. "He thinks I'm scared and desperate." "Perfect." Nathan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her this was too dangerous, that they should just take the evidence to the authorities and hope for the best. But he looked at her face and saw the same expression he'd seen in the mirror after his wife died. The look of someone who'd lost too much and was done being afraid. No one ever sees the driver. They talk on phones, argue with lawyers, cry after bad news, all while I sit 3 feet away, invisible. You were the only one who saw me as a person from day one. Now I'm returning the favor. Whatever happens, I'll be right there with you." They spent the day preparing. Nathan called Jack, explained what they needed. Within 3 hours, they had a wire thin enough to be invisible under clothing and recording equipment that could capture audio through walls. Sarah protested the whole plan, said they were idiots, said she was washing her hands of both of them, then showed up with a medical kit and instructions on how to treat a gunshot wound. "Just in case," she said grimly. At 7:30, Nathan drove Olivia to Cartwright Industries headquarters. The building was mostly empty at this hour, just security guards and the occasional executive working late. They parked in the underground garage, and Nathan checked the wire one more time, making sure it was transmitting clearly. Jack and his team were in a van 2 blocks away, listening to every word. "You don't have to do this," Nathan said quietly. Olivia met his eyes. "Yes, I do. For my father. For everyone Richard's hurt." She paused. "And for you. You almost died because of me last night." "I almost died because I chose to," Nathan corrected. "That's not on you." But Olivia was already getting out of the bar, squaring her shoulders, preparing for the performance of her life. Nathan followed her to the elevator, rode up to the executive floor in silence. The doors opened onto a hushed corridor, thick carpet muffling their footsteps. Richard Bartlett's office was at the end of the hall, door open, light spilling out. He was waiting for them. Richard was in his early 60s, silver-haired and distinguished in an expensive suit. He looked like someone's kind grandfather, the sort of man who donated to charities and volunteered at hospitals. He smiled when he saw Olivia, warm and concerned. "Olivia, dear, thank you for coming. I've been so worried about you since that incident at the gala." His eyes flicked to Nathan. "I thought I said come alone." Olivia stepped forward, putting herself between Nathan and Richard. "He's my driver, and after last night, I don't go anywhere without him." Richard's smile tightened. "Of course, very sensible. Please sit down." He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Olivia sat. Nathan remained standing, positioning himself where he could see both doors and the windows. Richard noticed and something flickered behind his pleasant expression. "So," he said, settling into his leather chair, "your message said you found some of your father's files. What exactly did you find?" Olivia pulled out a folder, a copy of the audit, not the original, and laid it on the desk. "Everything. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the embezzlement. 7 years of theft. $50 million. My father knew. He was going to expose you." Richard didn't touch the folder. He just looked at it, his face carefully neutral. Those are serious accusations, Olivia. Based on what? Some documents that could have been fabricated? Your father was paranoid in his last months. You know that. I know he died 3 days after receiving this audit, Olivia said, her voice steady, cold. I know someone tried to poison me last night, the same way they probably poisoned him. And I know you're the only person with enough access and motivation to do it. Richard leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. And yet you came here alone to confront me with these accusations. Either you're very brave or very stupid. His smile was gone now, replaced by something harder. I came here to make a deal, Olivia said. You give me 20 million, transferred to an account I specify, and I burn these files. We never speak of this again. You retire, cite health reasons, and disappear. I take over the company completely, and we both move on with our lives. Richard studied her for a long moment. Nathan could see him calculating, weighing options. 20 million is a lot of money, he said finally. What makes you think I have that kind of liquid capital? You stole 50 million, Olivia pointed out. I'm giving you a chance to keep 30. That's a generous offer, considering I could go to the FBI instead. Richard's laugh was unexpected, sharp and bitter. The FBI? Yes. You could do that. And then what? I have lawyers, Olivia. I have friends in very high places. I have ways to make this all disappear. And you along with it. He leaned forward. Your father thought he was untouchable too. Look how that worked out. The words hung in the air like a confession. Nathan felt his muscles tense, ready to move. Olivia's face had gone white, but her voice stayed level. So you admit it? You killed him? Richard shrugged. I admit nothing. But hypothetically, if someone were embezzling from a company and the owner discovered it, that person might have to protect themselves. It's just business, Olivia. Nothing personal. Nothing personal, Olivia repeated. You murdered my father, your best friend, and it was just business? Her hands were shaking now, anger overriding fear. What about last night? Was that business too? Richard's expression didn't change. Last night was unfortunate. You were never supposed to come back from that gala. But your driver here, he nodded at Nathan, turned out to be more observant than expected. Who are you, really? You're not just a driver. Nathan stepped forward, putting himself partially in front of Olivia. Secret Service. I worked presidential detail. Your hired waiter wasn't as professional as you thought. He could see the calculation in Richard's eyes, reassessing the threat level. Olivia's father hired me 2 months ago, asked me to keep an eye on his daughter. He suspected someone might come after her if something happened to him. Guess he was right. Richard smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. So you're here as what? A witness? This entire conversation is meaningless without proof, Nathan. It's my word against hers, and I'm a respected executive with 30 years of service. She's a grieving daughter who's clearly unstable. He stood up, walked to the window overlooking the city. I think this meeting is over. Take your files, Olivia. Do whatever you want with them. But know that if you try to use them against me, you'll lose everything. Your company, your reputation, your freedom. I'll make sure of it. Olivia stood too, her hands steady now. That's where you're wrong, Richard. This conversation isn't meaningless, because I recorded every word. She pulled open her jacket, showed him the wire taped to her chest. The FBI is listening right now. They heard you confess to murder and embezzlement. It's over. For the first time, Richard's composure cracked. His face went red, then white. You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? He moved fast for a man his age, pulling a gun from his desk drawer. Nathan was faster. He shoved Olivia behind him, already calculating angles and distances. Don't, he said quietly. Security's already on their way. FBI is right behind them. There's no way out. Richard kept the gun trained on them, his hand surprisingly steady. There's always a way out. I just need a head start. He backed toward the door, keeping them covered. You two stay right there. Don't follow me. Nathan could have rushed him, could have taken the shot, trusted his training to disarm Richard before he could fire. But Olivia was right behind him, and Richard was desperate. Desperate men made mistakes that got people killed. So he stayed still and watched Richard back into the hallway. the gun never wavering. Then Richard was gone, and they heard his footsteps running toward the stairwell. Nathan grabbed Olivia's hand. "Come on, we're not letting him get away." They followed Richard down the stairs, Nathan in front, clearing corners and checking sight lines. 6 floors down, then 8, then 10. They burst out into the parking garage just in time to see Richard's car speeding toward the exit. And then the headlights appeared. Multiple vehicles blocking the ramp. FBI with Jack Morrison standing front and center, badge held high. Richard slammed on his brakes, tried to reverse, but more cars were behind him. He was boxed in. Nathan and Olivia watched from the stairwell door as agents swarmed Richard's car, pulled him out, cuffed him. He was shouting something about lawyers and rights and false accusations, but no one was listening. Jack caught Nathan's eye across the garage, gave him a small nod. It was done. Olivia's hand found Nathan's, squeezed tight. "We got him," she whispered. "We actually got him." Nathan squeezed back. "Your father would be proud." The next few hours were a blur of statements and paperwork and FBI agents asking the same questions in different ways. Nathan told them everything about the gala, the poison, the investigation. Olivia gave them her father's files, explained about the safe deposit box, played them the recording from tonight. By the time they were done, the sun was coming up, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Nathan drove Olivia home in silence. She stared out of the window, watching the city wake up, processing everything that had happened. When they pulled into her building's garage, she didn't immediately get out. "Thank you," she said finally, "for everything, for saving my life, for helping me find the truth, for being exactly the kind of person my father trusted you to be." Nathan turned to look at her. "I'm sorry about your father. I'm sorry I couldn't protect him." She met his eyes, and he saw tears there, finally spilling over. "You protected me." That's what he wanted. They sat there for a moment, 2 people who'd survived something terrible together. Then Olivia asked, "What happens now? You're not really just a driver, and I don't really need one anymore. So, what are you?" Nathan thought about his daughter, about the life he'd built in anonymity, thought about his wife and the promises he'd made to keep their child safe. Thought about the last 3 years of hiding and the sudden strange relief of being seen for who he really was. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've been running from my old life for so long. I'm not sure what comes next." Olivia wiped her eyes, managed a small smile. "Well, when you figure it out, let me know. Cartwright Industries could use a new head of security. Someone with your particular skill set. Someone I can trust." It was an offer Nathan hadn't expected. A way back into the world he'd left behind, but on his own terms this time. "I have a daughter," he said. "Sophie. She's 7. Any job I take has to work around her schedule." "I like kids," Olivia said. "Bring her to the office sometime. Let her see what her dad does." She opened the car door, paused. The kiss at the gala. Was it really just about the poison? Nathan remembered that moment. The decision made in a fraction of a second. The feel of her mouth against his. The taste of champagne and chemical death. The way she looked at him after, angry and alive. At the time, yes, he said honestly. Now I'm not sure anymore. Olivia nodded like that was the answer she'd expected. "Well, when you figure that out too, let me know." She got out of the car, then leaned back in through the window. Nathan Hayes, former Secret Service agent, current lifesaver, future head of security. Thank you for being the kind of person who kisses billionaires to save their lives. She was gone before he could respond, disappearing into the elevator with a wave. Nathan sat in his car for a long time after she left, thinking about choices and consequences and the strange way life pushed people together. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter's school. "Sophie's class play is Friday at 2 p.m. Hope you can make it." He typed back, "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Then another text, this one from Jack. "Richard Bartlett's in custody. Full confession. Nice work." Nathan started the car and headed home. The city was fully awake now, people rushing to work, living their normal lives. He thought about what Olivia had said, about bringing Sophie to the office, about having a time where he could use his skills without hiding who he was. It felt like possibility. It felt like hope. His wife would have liked that. She'd always said he was at his best when he was helping people, protecting people, being the person he'd trained to be. 7 days passed in a haze of medication, doctor visits, and blood tests. Nathan's liver function remained compromised, the poison lingering in his system like an unwelcome guest. He'd moved back to his apartment, a modest two-bedroom in a neighborhood that hadn't quite gentrified, once the worst symptoms subsided. The doctors recommended complete rest for at least another week. Nathan managed 3 days before restlessness drove him to action. Sophie had been staying with her aunt in New Jersey, away from the potential danger. Nathan missed her with an ache that rivaled his physical discomfort. Their nightly video calls weren't enough. He needed to see her face, feel her small arms wrapped around his neck, hear the unfiltered stories of her day without digital interference. But not yet. Not until he knew for certain the threat had passed. The morning light filtered through half-closed blinds as Nathan reviewed his notes on Richard Bartlett. He'd compiled everything: the man's work history, education, known associates, properties owned. The embezzlement scheme had been sophisticated, layered through multiple shell companies, requiring significant financial expertise. Nathan had seen similar structures used by crime syndicates and terrorist cells to hide money transfers. Richard had either learned from professionals or had help. Neither option was comforting. His phone rang, breaking the silence. Jack Morrison's name flashed on the screen. Nathan answered immediately. The FBI's digging through Richard's finances as we speak. Initial findings support everything in Kirkland's report. But there's something else. Richard made regular payments to a security consultant named Marcus Vega, former military, dishonorable discharge. The kind of guy who takes jobs most people wouldn't touch. Nathan processed this. The waiter at the gala. Had to be. He'll talk when pressured. Jack's response confirmed Nathan's suspicion. Already has, said Richard hired him for occasional special assignments over the past 3 years, including arranging an accident for Eleanor Hayes. The world seemed to stop. Nathan gripped the phone tighter, knuckles white. Eleanor, his wife. The accident that had haunted him for 3 years. Not random, not a coincidence. Jack continued, voice gentler now. Richard must have learned you were investigating your wife's death, saw you as a threat. There are texts between them from right before Eleanor's accident. I'm sorry, Nathan. Nathan closed his eyes, trying to process the new reality. Eleanor's death and Thomas Cartwright's. Connected through Richard Bartlett. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Vega's in custody, locked down tight. We've got a protective detail on your daughter, too, just in case Richard had other associates. Nathan thanked Jack, ended the call, and sat motionless for a long time. The conspiracy ran deeper than he'd imagined. His wife hadn't been random collateral damage in some financial scheme. She'd been deliberately targeted because of him, because someone had realized he was asking questions. The guilt crashed over him in a suffocating wave. The doorbell rang, dragging him back to the present. Nathan checked the security camera, a habit from his Secret Service days, and found Olivia standing in the hallway holding a paper bag from what appeared to be a pharmacy. He buzzed her in, surprised by the visit. She entered hesitantly, taking in his modest apartment with curious eyes. No designer furniture here, no original artwork, just comfortable, practical pieces accumulated over years. Sophie's drawings covered the refrigerator. Her toys occupied a corner of the living room, a life built around a child, not a career or an image. You look terrible, Olivia observed, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. Sarah said the medication might make you feel worse before you get better. I brought supplements, she recommended, and soup. Nathan managed a weak smile. CEOs make house calls now? Olivia began unpacking the bag, arranging bottles of vitamins and medications with methodical precision. I cleared my morning schedule. Told the board I had personal matters to attend to, which is true. She glanced around the apartment again, eyes lingering on Sophie's school photos displayed on a bookshelf. This is nice. Real. I don't see many real homes. Something vulnerable flickered across her face, there and gone so quickly Nathan almost missed it. He realized with sudden clarity that Olivia Cartwright, billionaire CEO, might be lonely in ways money couldn't fix. I just got off the phone with Jack, Nathan said, redirecting the conversation. The FBI found a connection between Richard and a man named Marcus Vega. He was the waiter at the gala. Olivia stopped arranging bottles, turned to face him. And And 3 years ago, Richard hired him to arrange my wife's car accident. She wasn't random. She was targeted because I was investigating financial irregularities that might have led back to Richard. The words hung between them, stark and painful. Olivia crossed the small living room and sat beside him on the couch, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. I didn't know, Nathan. I'm so sorry. Her voice held no platitudes, no empty comfort, just recognition of a pain she understood too well. They sat in silence for a moment, united by shared grief and the man who had caused it. Then the apartment door burst open, startling them both. A small whirlwind with dark pigtails and a purple backpack rushed in, followed by a harried-looking woman in her 40s. "Daddy!" Sophie launched herself at Nathan, who caught her despite the protest from his still-healing body. "I finished my science project early and Aunt Lisa said I could come home." Lisa Hayes gave Nathan an apologetic look. She was inconsolable at school, kept saying she needed to make sure you were okay. The teacher called me, and I couldn't say no. Nathan hugged his daughter tightly, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and classroom crayons. Sophie pulled back to examine his face critically, the way she did whenever he claimed to be just fine after a hard day. "You don't look sick anymore," she announced, satisfied with her inspection. Then she noticed Olivia. "Who are you? Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" The directness of childhood. Nathan felt heat rise to his face, but Olivia laughed, a genuine sound he'd rarely heard from her. "No, I'm your dad's boss. My name is Olivia. You must be Sophie. Your dad talks about you all the time." Sophie considered this information seriously. "If you're the boss, can you give him a day off? We need to go to the aquarium." Nathan opened his mouth to intervene, but Olivia answered with complete seriousness. "That seems reasonable. In fact, I think your dad deserves several days off. He did something very brave last week." Sophie's eyes widened. "Like when he was a superhero guard for the president? Something like that." Olivia smiled at Nathan over Sophie's head. "The kind of bravery that makes you a hero even without a title or a badge." Lisa excused herself after ensuring Nathan had everything he needed, promising to return for Sophie that evening. The unexpected presence of his daughter changed the atmosphere, making talk of murder and embezzlement impossible. Instead, they ate soup at the small kitchen table, while Sophie regaled them with stories about her class's tadpole habitat. Nathan watched Olivia interact with his daughter, answering her rapid-fire questions with patience and genuine interest. She didn't speak to Sophie in the condescending tone adults often use with children. Instead, she listened carefully and responded thoughtfully, even to questions about why her shoes cost so much or whether she owned a helicopter. When Sophie went to her room to find a drawing she wanted to show Daddy's boss lady, Nathan turned to Olivia. "We still need to follow up with James Kirkland. I'm well enough to travel. We should go tomorrow." Olivia nodded, keeping her voice low. "I've arranged for my private jet. We can be in Boston and back in a day." "But are you sure?" "The doctors said—" "The doctors don't know what's at stake," Nathan interrupted. "Richard's in custody, but we still don't know if he was working alone. Your father mentioned two names, remember? Richard and David Sutton." Sophie returned with her drawing, an elaborate underwater scene with mermaids and sea monsters, before Olivia could respond. Nathan watched his daughter explain her artistic choices to the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, who listened as though this presentation was as important as any boardroom pitch. They made plans for Boston between Sophie's stories and an impromptu tour of her room. By the time Lisa returned that evening, Nathan felt more like himself than he had in a week. The constant presence of his daughter had forced him to push aside his pain and anger, to focus on something beyond revenge. Sophie's goodbye hug nearly cracked his ribs, her small arms fierce in their protectiveness. When the door closed behind them, Olivia sat back down at the kitchen table. "You're a good father." Nathan shrugged, uncomfortable with the observation. "She makes it easy." "No, it's not easy. I know what it's like to be raised by someone distracted by work and vendettas. My father loved me, but his priorities were clear. The company always came first, then his personal crusades, then maybe me. You're different with Sophie. You're present." Nathan considered her words, recognizing the unintentional revelation about her own childhood. It was strange to think of Thomas Cartwright as an absent father when all the reports painted him as a family man. Public images rarely told the full story. She pulls me back from the edge, Nathan admitted. Makes me remember there's more to life than old grudges and security protocols. The morning after my wife died, I wanted to burn the world down. Then Sophie asked for pancakes and I had to figure out how to make them. She saved me without knowing it. Olivia nodded, understanding in her eyes. Maybe that's what we're all looking for. Someone who pulls us back from whatever edge we're standing on. The next morning, they boarded Olivia's private jet at Teterboro Airport. The luxury of private aviation was new to Nathan. The leather seats, the absence of security lines, the attentive staff who seemed to anticipate needs before they arose. He felt out of place until Olivia kicked off her heels and pulled out a stack of financial reports, immediately transforming the space into a mobile office. The jet streaked across the clear October sky, covering the distance to Boston in under an hour. A car waited on the tarmac, driver holding the door without making eye contact. Nathan noted the security features of the vehicle: bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, run-flat tires. Olivia had taken his advice seriously. James Kirkland's office occupied the top floor of a brownstone in Boston's financial district. No flashy sign, no receptionist, just a solid door with a discreet brass plaque. The forensic accountant himself was a surprise. Younger than Nathan expected, maybe 40, with a runner's build and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Thank you for meeting us on such short notice," Olivia began once they were seated in Kirkland's Spartan office. "We've been through my father's files from the safe deposit box, but we need to understand exactly what you found and what my father knew." Kirkland had nodded, typing something into his computer. "I'll show you the money trail first. Then we can discuss who might have been involved." He turned the monitor so they could see. "Your father contacted me 4 months ago. Said he'd noticed inconsistencies in the company's international accounts. Small discrepancies that added up to something bigger. He was right. I found a sophisticated embezzlement scheme dating back 7 years. Approximately $50 million moved through a series of shell companies before ending up in offshore accounts." Nathan studied the screen, recognizing the same structure he'd seen in the files from the safe deposit box. Kirkland clicked through several screens, showing bank transfers, corporate registrations, tax filings. "The primary beneficiary was Richard Bartlett," Kirkland continued. "His fingerprints were all over this, though he tried to hide them. But there was something else. Some of the money, about $12 million, went to accounts I couldn't trace back to Richard. Different signature, different pattern. I told your father I suspected a second person was involved." Olivia leaned forward. "Did he mention who he suspected?" Kirkland's expression grew troubled. "He had 2 names, Richard, of course, and someone named David. Said they were the only ones with access to the specific accounts in question." "David Sutton," Nathan filled in. "Head of acquisitions." Kirkland nodded. "That sounds right. Your father was going to confront Richard first, then David if necessary. Said he had a personal relationship with Richard that might make a difference." Nathan exchanged glances with Olivia. That personal relationship hadn't saved Thomas Cartwright. If anything, it had made him more vulnerable. "When was the break-in?" Nathan asked. "You mentioned someone accessed your office." "About 5 weeks ago," Kirkland said. "Nothing taken, but files were disturbed. My assistant surprised them. Described a professional-looking man in his 40s. Dark hair, scar on his left hand. The description matched the waiter from the gala. Marcus Vega, Richard's hired muscle." Nathan felt the pieces clicking into place. They spent another hour with Kirkland, going through the financial evidence in detail. By the time they left, Nathan was convinced of 2 things. Richard Bartlett had masterminded the embezzlement, and David Sutton had likely been involved. The question was whether David knew about the murders. On the flight back to New York, Olivia was unusually quiet. Nathan gave her space, reviewing his notes until she was ready to talk. Finally, she closed her laptop and turned to him. "I have a board meeting tomorrow morning. Can't postpone it again without raising suspicion. David will be there, along with everyone else who might be involved. I need to act normal, like nothing's changed." Nathan considered the risks. "Let me attend. Not in the room, but close by. I'll monitor from the security office." Olivia shook her head. "Security reports directly to the board. If David's involved, having you there would tip him off." Nathan wasn't deterred. The building has a service corridor that runs behind the boardroom. Maintenance access, I can monitor from there with the right equipment. He'll never know. Olivia studied him for a moment, then nodded. Whatever we learn tomorrow, we need to be careful. If David is involved and realizes we know, he'll be dangerous. The Cartwright Industries headquarters dominated a city block in Midtown Manhattan, 60 floors of glass and steel housing 5,000 employees. Nathan entered through a service entrance, wearing a maintenance uniform procured by Jack Morrison. The FBI was building their case against Richard, but they needed more evidence to move on David. Today might provide it. Nathan navigated the service corridors, avoiding security cameras. The access panel behind the boardroom was exactly where the building plans indicated. He set up his equipment, a directional microphone and a small recording device, then settled in to wait. Board members arrived in waves. Nathan recognized them from Olivia's briefing. Lawrence Chen, the tech visionary. Maria Delgado, institutional investor representative. Philip Eames, old money and older connections. 5 others whose names blurred together. David Sutton arrived last, just before the meeting was scheduled to begin. The discussion started with quarterly reports, revenue streams, market projections, competitive analysis. Corporate speak that Nathan tuned out until he heard David's voice. I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Richard Bartlett's arrest and the allegations against him. The company is vulnerable right now. Our stock dipped 8% yesterday. We need a unified response. Olivia's voice came through clearly. The FBI is handling the investigation. Richard's actions were his own, not the company's. Our legal team is cooperating fully. David wasn't satisfied. With respect, Olivia, this happened on your watch, and your father's before you. The board needs to consider whether new leadership might be appropriate during this crisis. Nathan tensed, hearing the threat beneath the words. David was making his move, using Richard's arrest to try to oust Olivia. Maria Delgado spoke next. I represent shareholders who invested over $300 million in this company. They want stability, not more upheaval. Olivia stays unless there's evidence she was involved, which there isn't. Philip Eames cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise. Olivia remains CEO, but we establish an executive oversight committee. 3 board members who approve major decisions until this crisis passes. Nathan could imagine Olivia's expression, the slight tightening around her eyes, the lifted chin. Her voice remained measured when she responded. I understand the concern, but limiting the CEO's authority sends the wrong message to the market. It suggests guilt by association. Instead, let me propose increased transparency. Weekly reports to the board on all financial movements. An independent audit committee with direct reporting to all of you. Full cooperation with federal investigators. The debate continued for nearly an hour, voices rising and falling as alliances formed and fractured. David pushed repeatedly for restrictions on Olivia's authority. Others defended her, but with reservations. Finally, a compromise emerged. Olivia would retain full authority, but with enhanced reporting requirements and a 90-day review period. As the meeting wound down, Nathan heard David make his final attempt. I'd like to revisit our security protocols. In light of recent events, we may want to consider outsourcing to a professional firm rather than maintaining an in-house team. I've prepared a proposal. Olivia's response was immediate. Security will remain in-house. In fact, I'm appointing a new director of security later this week, someone with federal experience and specialized training. Nathan almost smiled, recognizing the reference to him. The meeting adjourned shortly after, board members filing out to return to their separate worlds of privilege. Nathan packed up his equipment and retreated down the service corridor before anyone could discover him. He met Olivia an hour later at a small coffee shop 6 blocks from the office, far enough away to avoid corporate eyes. She looked exhausted, the weight of the morning evident in the slope of her shoulders. David was pushing hard to get you removed, Nathan observed once they'd secured a corner table. Olivia stirred her coffee, expression distant. He's been doing that for months, even before my father died. Always subtle, always couched in concern for the company. But today was more aggressive. Do you think he knows we suspect him? Olivia shook her head. I don't think so. This felt like opportunism, not panic. Using Richard's arrest to advance his own position. The real question is whether he knows about Richard's other activities. The murders. Nathan considered the possibility. If David was involved in the embezzlement but not the killings, he might be salvageable as a witness. If he knew about the murders, he was as guilty as Richard. He proposed outsourcing security, Olivia continued. Specifically mentioned eliminating my personal security detail as a cost-saving measure. If he's involved, that would make sense. Remove protection, create vulnerability. Nathan's instincts sharpened. That's worth investigating. Did he have a specific company in mind? Olivia nodded, pulling a folder from her bag. Vanguard X Security. Never heard of them, but the proposal is comprehensive, almost as if it was prepared in advance, waiting for the right moment. Nathan took the folder, scanning the contents. Professional looking, standard boilerplate about experience and capabilities. Then a name caught his eye. Principal consultant, Marcus Vega. The same man who had posed as a waiter at the gala. The man who had arranged Eleanor's accident. He showed Olivia the page, watched realization dawn on her face. It's him, the waiter. The man who killed my wife, Nathan finished, and tried to kill you, working for a security company David wants to hire. The connection was undeniable. David Sutton wasn't just aware of Richard's criminal activities. He was actively involved in the murder conspiracy. The coffee shop suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. Nathan paid the bill, and they left immediately, taking a circuitous route back to Olivia's building. They spent the afternoon in Olivia's apartment, compiling everything they knew about David Sutton. Corporate records, financial disclosures, social media presence. The man had built a carefully curated public image, Harvard Business School, charity board memberships, profile pieces in business magazines. But beneath the polish, Nathan found inconsistencies. Unexplained wealth beyond his considerable salary, a pattern of failed businesses before joining Cartwright Industries, connections to offshore investment groups that mirrored the structure of Richard's shell companies. By evening, they had enough circumstantial evidence to justify further investigation, but nothing concrete enough for an arrest. The FBI would need more. We need to access his private files, Nathan said as they reviewed their findings. The evidence has to be there, communications with Richard, payments to Vega, planning documents. Olivia looked skeptical. His office is secure, computer encrypted. How would we get access? Nathan had been considering this problem. He has a lake house in the Adirondacks, goes there most weekends according to his social media. We could, before he could finish, the apartment's security system chimed, indicating a breach. Nathan was on his feet instantly, moving toward Olivia, who was already pulling up the security feed on her phone. The cameras showed a dark figure in the service corridor leading to the penthouse, moving with professional efficiency. Someone's in the building, Olivia whispered, unnecessary but instinctive in the sudden tension. Nathan assessed their options. The penthouse had 2 exits, the main elevator and a service stairwell. Both could be compromised. His weapon was locked in the car downstairs, a critical error he wouldn't repeat. Call building security, he instructed Olivia, moving to the kitchen for anything that could serve as a weapon. Tell them there's an intruder on the residence floor, approaching the penthouse. Then call Jack Morrison. Code red. Olivia made the calls while Nathan secured the apartment, locking doors, checking sight lines, creating defensible positions. He just finished when the power went out, plunging the penthouse into darkness. Emergency lighting activated seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie blue glow. The security panel near the door beeped, someone attempting to override the locks. Nathan positioned himself beside the entrance, kitchen knife in hand, an imperfect weapon, but better than nothing. He gestured for Olivia to take cover behind the solid granite kitchen island. She complied, eyes wide but focused. The security panel beeped again. This time followed went the metallic click of the lock disengaging. The door began to open slowly. Nathan tightened his grip on the knife, calculating angles and timing. Just as the intruder stepped across the threshold, the main lights blazed back on. The sudden brightness was disorienting, giving the intruder a momentary advantage. Nathan recognized him immediately. Marcus Vega, the waiter from the gala, the man who had killed Eleanor. He moved without conscious thought, muscle memory from years of training taking over. The knife flashed forward, not to kill, but to disable. Vega countered, knocking the blade away with a practice move. Both men adjusted stance, circling, evaluating. "You're looking better than the last time I saw you," Vega observed, voice casual as if they were old acquaintances meeting at a bar. "The poison should have killed you. My client will be disappointed." Nathan kept his expression neutral, searching for an opening. "Your client's in federal custody. Richard Bartlett's done. Walk away now, you might avoid a murder charge." Vega smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Richard's not my only client, and I never leave jobs unfinished." He moved with surprising speed for his size, closing the distance between them. Nathan blocked the first strike, countered with an elbow to the ribs that connected solidly. Vega grunted but didn't slow, landing a blow to Nathan's kidney that reawakened the poison's damage, sending waves of pain through his body. They fought in the confined space of the entryway, each looking for advantage, each recognizing in the other a trained professional. Nathan was still recovering, his reactions a fraction slower than normal. Vega was fresh, focused. The odds weren't favorable. Then Olivia entered the equation. She emerged from behind the kitchen island, fire extinguisher in hand, and unleashed a cloud of chemicals directly into Vega's face. The distraction was momentary but sufficient. Nathan drove his knee into Vega's solar plexus, followed by a strike to the throat that dropped the larger man to the floor, gasping. Building security arrived moments later, followed by NYPD officers responding to the alarm. Nathan kept Vega pinned until handcuffs were secured, then stepped back, fighting the tremors that threatened to overtake him now that the adrenaline was fading. The police took statements, collected evidence, treated the scene with the seriousness it deserved. Through it all, Olivia remained composed, answering questions with precision, never revealing more than necessary. She'd learned corporate discretion well. When the officers finally left, taking Vega into custody, Olivia sank onto the couch, the facade of control crumbling. She was shaking, reactions setting in now that the immediate danger had passed. Nathan sat beside her, his own body protesting the exertion of the fight. "He came to kill us," Olivia said, voice small in the vast penthouse. "Just walked in like he belonged here." Nathan nodded, the implications clear. Someone had given Vega access codes, security clearances. Someone who wanted them both eliminated. David Sutton. "We can't stay here," Nathan decided. "It's not secure. We need a safe house until the FBI can move on David." Olivia looked around her home, at the photographs and carefully chosen furnishings that made the space hers. The vulnerability in her expression was a stark contrast to the corporate warrior he'd watched handle the board. For a moment, she seemed much younger than her 29 years, faced with the reality that nowhere was truly safe. "I have a place," she said finally. "A cabin in Vermont. No one at the company knows about it. My father bought it under a different name. We used to go there when he needed to escape." Nathan considered the option. Remote location, unknown to potential threats, easily defensible. It would work. "How soon can we leave?" Olivia stood, purpose replacing shock. "Within the hour. I'll pack essentials. The cabin has everything else we need." They worked efficiently, gathering only what couldn't be replaced. Nathan called Jack Morrison to update him on Vega's arrest and their plans to relocate temporarily. Jack promised to expedite the investigation into David Sutton, but warned it might take days to build a solid case. Days they might not have if David realized his assassin had failed. As Olivia packed a small bag in her bedroom, Nathan prowled the penthouse, checking security measures, identifying vulnerabilities. The attack had been too easy, too direct. Building security should have stopped Vega long before he reached the residence floor. Someone had helped him, provided access cards, deactivated alarms, perhaps even created a diversion to occupy the security team. The threat wasn't eliminated, it had only changed form. They left through the service entrance, taking the freight elevator to the basement garage where Nathan had parked his nondescript sedan. The vehicle wasn't registered in his name, a precaution from his Secret Service days that now seemed prescient rather than paranoid. They exited the city via the Lincoln Tunnel, merging into late evening traffic heading west. Once they were on the highway, Olivia's shoulders relaxed marginally. She stared out the window at the passing lights, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "I never thought I'd be running for my life," she said after miles of silence. "When my father died, I thought the worst had already happened. I was wrong. Nathan kept his eyes on the road, watching for vehicles that might be following them. Sometimes the worst comes in waves, hits you when you're already down. Olivia turned to look at him, studying his profile in the dim light from the dashboard. Is that what happened to you after Eleanor died? Nathan nodded, memories surfacing unwanted. I spent 18 months investigating her death. Alienated friends, neglected Sophie, nearly lost my job. Couldn't prove anything concrete, just patterns. Coincidences that weren't coincidences. Eventually I had to stop, for Sophie's sake. Had to pretend I'd accepted the official version. He hadn't told anyone this, not even Jack. The admission felt strange, like removing armor he'd worn so long he'd forgotten it wasn't part of him. You never really believed it was an accident, Olivia observed. Even before you had proof. Some things you know in your gut. The way the truck hit her car. The missing traffic camera footage. The investigation that wrapped up too quickly, too neatly. But knowing and proving are different things. Olivia was silent for a moment, processing. That's why you took the job with my father. You recognized the patterns. I recognized a man who was afraid for his daughter, Nathan corrected. Everything else came later. The drive to Vermont took 4 hours, the final stretch along narrow mountain roads illuminated only by the car's headlights. The cabin emerged from the darkness, a substantial structure of timber and stone nestled among towering pines. Not the rustic retreat Nathan had imagined, but a modern interpretation of wilderness luxury. Olivia used a key hidden in a false rock to unlock the door, then entered a code on the security panel just inside. The lights came on, revealing an open-concept living area with vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that would offer spectacular views in daylight. My father called this his thinking place, Olivia explained, as they moved through the space. Said the mountains gave him perspective. We came here when my mother died, spent a month just existing together. It was the only time I ever saw him put work aside completely. There was a wistfulness in her voice, a glimpse of the child she'd been, hungry for her father's undivided attention. Nathan wondered if Thomas Cartwright had realized how precious those moments were to his daughter. If he'd known that the memory of that month would sustain her through the loss of him. They secured the cabin, checking locks and sightlines, setting up makeshift alarms on the approaches. When they'd done everything possible, exhaustion descended like a physical weight. Olivia showed Nathan to one of the guest rooms, then retreated to what had been her father's room, closing the door softly behind her. Nathan lay on the bed fully clothed, too wired for sleep despite his body's demands. His mind raced through the events of the day, the board meeting, David Sutton's maneuvers, Vega's attack, the escape to Vermont. They'd survived, but the danger remained. David was still free, still operating from a position of corporate power. And now he knew his assassin had failed. Morning brought clarity in the form of sunlight streaming through pine boughs and the quiet certainty of a plan forming in Nathan's mind. He found Olivia already awake, sitting on the deck with a mug of coffee, wrapped in what looked like her father's old sweater. The mountain air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. We need to trap David the same way we trapped Richard, Nathan said without preamble. Get him to incriminate himself on record. Olivia didn't turn from her contemplation of the mountains. He's smarter than Richard, more cautious. He won't confess just because I confront him. Nathan sat in the adjacent chair, the wood cool against his back. Not a direct confrontation, a different approach. You call him, tell him you found evidence in your father's papers that exonerates Richard and implicates someone else. Say you need his help figuring out what to do. Olivia considered this, skepticism evident in her expression. Why would he believe that? And why would I call him specifically? Because he's the head of acquisitions. He understands complex corporate structures. And because you trust him, he's been supportive in board meetings, at least publicly. Play on that, sound vulnerable, confused. Let him think he's in control. Olivia's gaze shifted from the mountains to Nathan, evaluating. You think he'll reveal something if he believes I'm not a threat, that I'm turning to him for help? Nathan nodded. Men like David have egos. If he thinks you see him as a mentor, a protector, he might let his guard down, especially if he believes you have evidence that could harm him, but don't realize it. The plan took shape over breakfast, details refined, contingencies considered. They would need Jack's help, FBI resources. By mid-morning, the framework was in place. Olivia would call David, arrange a private meeting at his lake house in the Adirondacks. The FBI would wire her, establish surveillance, prepare to move once they had sufficient evidence. The preparations consumed the day. Jack Morrison arranged for an FBI team to meet them halfway between Vermont and the Adirondacks. The technology would be cutting edge, microscopic transmitters, satellite monitoring, agents positioned to respond within minutes if the situation deteriorated. Nothing would be left to chance. As evening approached, Nathan found Olivia standing at the cabin's picture window, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. The coming darkness seemed symbolic, a reminder of what awaited them. "This ends tomorrow," Nathan said, joining her at the window. "One way or another." Olivia didn't respond immediately, her attention fixed on the dying light. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but subdued. "I've been thinking about my father, about the choices he made. He tried to handle this himself, thought he could protect me by keeping secrets. He was wrong." Nathan understood the unspoken question beneath her words. "Am I making the same mistake? Should we just turn everything over to the FBI and step away?" "Your father didn't have all the pieces," Nathan said carefully. "He didn't know how deep it went, who was involved. We do. That knowledge comes with responsibility." Olivia turned to face him, her expression resolute in the fading light. "I want justice. For my father. For your wife. But I'm not willing to die for it. Neither would they." The statement hung between them, a recognition of limits neither had acknowledged before. Nathan realized with sudden clarity that somewhere in the past week, his motivation had shifted. Revenge had been supplanted by something else. A desire to build rather than destroy, to protect the living rather than avenge the dead. "I want to see Sophie grow up," he admitted. "Want to be there when she graduates, when she falls in love, when she figures out who she wants to be. That matters more than settling old scores." Olivia's hand found his in the gathering darkness, fingers intertwining with a naturalness that should have surprised him but didn't. The contact was grounding, a reminder that they were still alive despite everything, still capable of connection. "Tomorrow we face David," she said softly. "But tonight we remember why it matters, who we're fighting for." In the silence that followed, Nathan thought of Sophie's laugh, of Olivia's resilience, of second chances he'd never expected. The mountain night enfolded the cabin, stars emerging in the clear sky above. Whatever tomorrow brought, this moment, this connection, was real. Some things even Richard Bartlett and David Sutton couldn't take away. The morning air in the Adirondacks carried the sharp bite of approaching winter. David Sutton's lake house stood on a wooded peninsula, floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the silver ripples of water. The property screamed wealth without apology, private dock with a sleek speedboat, manicured gardens still holding color despite the season. Security cameras disguised as landscape lighting. Nathan surveyed it all from a distance, noting approaches and exits, calculating response times. FBI surveillance had confirmed David was alone. No household staff on Thursdays, no visitors expected beyond Olivia. The isolation that normally offered privacy would now ensure no innocent bystanders became entangled in whatever happened next. The FBI command center operated from an unmarked van parked at a public boat launch half a mile away. Jack Morrison ran the operation personally, his expression grave as he briefed Olivia on the wire concealed in her designer watch and the backup transmitter in her earrings. The technology was cutting edge, microscopic and undetectable in any standard security sweep. "Remember, don't push too hard," Jack instructed. "Let him lead the conversation. Ask innocent questions. Act like you trust him completely." Nathan stood back, watching Olivia absorb the instructions. The transformation had already begun, vulnerability replacing her usual confidence, hesitation softening her posture. She looked younger, less assured. The perfect target for a man like David, who preyed on perceived weakness. "You'll be close by?" Olivia's question directed at Nathan, not Jack. Nathan nodded. "In a boat on the lake, watching the house. Response time under 2 minutes if needed. The FBI team will be even closer once you're inside and David's security system is focused on you." The plan relied on David's arrogance, his belief that Olivia posed no threat. From everything they'd learned, the man saw her as an obstacle to be removed, not an opponent to be feared. That underestimation would be his downfall, but only if Olivia played her part perfectly. I know how men like David think, Olivia said, adjusting her cashmere sweater. They believe in their own superior intelligence. They dismiss women as emotional, irrational. I've sat through 100 meetings where men like him explained my own business to me. I can handle this. The quiet confidence behind her words solidified something in Nathan's chest. She wasn't just Thomas Cartwright's daughter or a billionaire CEO. She was a warrior in her own right, facing danger with clear eyes. Jack ran through the extraction scenarios one final time. If David confessed, they'd move immediately. If he became threatening, they'd interrupt before any harm came to Olivia. If the operation failed to produce usable evidence, they'd withdraw and regroup. Every contingency covered, every risk assessed. Nathan pulled Olivia aside before she left for the final approach. This isn't like with Richard. David's more calculating, more controlled. Don't challenge him directly. Let him believe he's helping you, guiding you. Men with God complexes can't resist playing savior. Olivia's eyes met his, determination hardening her gaze. I've spent my entire career dealing with men who thought they knew better than me. This is just one more boardroom battle with higher stakes. She reached out, squeezed his hand briefly. The gesture lasted only a second but conveyed volumes. Trust, partnership, something deeper neither of them had named. Nathan watched her drive away in the rental car, following the winding lakeside road toward David's property. The sight of her disappearing around the bend hollowed out his stomach. He'd sent agents into dangerous situations before, had made the call to risk lives for greater objectives. This felt different, personal in ways his training hadn't prepared him for. The boat waited at a private dock a quarter-mile from David's property, small enough to pass for a recreational fisherman, but equipped with specialized surveillance gear and a motor that could cross the distance in under 2 minutes. Nathan took position, earpiece connecting him to Jack and the tactical team. Through it, he heard Olivia's arrival at David's gate, the brief security exchange, the sound of gravel under tires as she pulled into the circular driveway. David greeted her at the door himself, no staff to buffer the interaction. The audio came through with perfect clarity. Olivia, this is unexpected. When you called, I assumed it was about the board decision. Olivia's voice carried the right note of controlled distress. It's related, but more complicated. I found something in my father's papers, something that changes everything about Richard's case. I didn't know who else to talk to. You've always been straight with me, even when the board was against me. David's response was measured, careful. Come in. We can discuss it privately. Nathan listened as they moved through the house, noted the subtle questions David asked about whether Olivia had shared her discovery with anyone else, whether she'd come alone. Classic information gathering, assessing threats and vulnerabilities. Olivia deflected masterfully, maintaining the illusion of trust while revealing nothing of consequence. The conversation unfolded exactly as they'd planned. Olivia played the confused heiress seeking guidance. David, the condescending mentor, eager to manipulate her weakness. When she mentioned the safe deposit box containing her father's evidence, David's interest sharpened noticeably. His suggestion that she retrieve and potentially destroy documents critical to the FBI investigation was the first threat of incrimination. Each minute brought more damning evidence as his confidence grew. When Olivia mentioned Richard's confession about her father's death, David made his fatal mistake. Your father was supposed to be a simple heart attack. Clean, professional, untraceable. Richard insisted on handling it personally, some misplaced sentimentality about doing it himself since they'd been friends. Sentimental fools don't belong in business. The confession hung in the air. Nathan signaled the tactical team, already moving toward David's dock, as the conversation took its inevitable turn toward danger. David's voice had transformed completely, all pretense abandoned. The FBI has suspicions, not evidence. Richard's word against mine, and Richard will be tragically found dead in his cell before he can testify. Suicide, of course, guilt overwhelming him. The sound of a drawer opening came through Nathan's earpiece, followed by Olivia's voice, pitched higher. David, don't do this. The FBI already has everything they need. You'll only make it worse. Nathan's boat hit the dock with enough force to rattle the wooden planks. He leapt out, weapon drawn, racing up the path toward the house. Through the lakeside windows, he could see them. David holding a gun, Olivia backed against a bookcase. No time for subtlety. Nathan fired twice, shattering the glass. David spun toward the new threat, giving Olivia the opening she needed. She drove her elbow into his arm with surprising force, disrupting his aim as he fired at Nathan. The bullet went wide, splintering the doorframe. FBI agents poured through the broken window and doorway simultaneously, overwhelming David with coordinated precision. Within seconds, he was on the ground, weapon kicked away, hands zip-tied behind his back. The takedown had lasted less than 15 seconds. Olivia stood frozen against the bookcase, eyes wide but focused. Nathan reached her in 3 strides, checking for injuries while Jack supervised David's arrest. She was physically unharmed but trembling with delayed reaction, adrenaline catching up now that the immediate danger had passed. "You did it," Nathan told her, hands steady on her shoulders. "We have everything. His confession about your father, about Richard, about the plan to silence him. It's over." Olivia's gaze shifted from Nathan to David, who was being led away in handcuffs, face contorted with rage. "He killed my father," she whispered. "He and Richard together, and he would have killed me without hesitation. Just business, nothing personal." The echo of Richard's words sent a chill through Nathan. The same justification from different lips, as if human lives were acceptable collateral damage in the pursuit of profit. He'd seen it before in terrorist cells, in organized crime, in corporate boardrooms. The dehumanization that made murder possible. The next hours blurred together, statements given, evidence processed, the full machinery of federal justice grinding into motion. David's home became a crime scene, yielding additional evidence with each room searched. By nightfall, they were back in Manhattan, the FBI field office buzzing with the activity despite the late hour. Jack Morrison looked exhausted but satisfied as he updated them on the investigation's progress. David singing like a bird, trying to cut a deal, blaming Richard for the murder plots, claiming he was just handling the financial side. "But we found his contract with Vega in the lake house safe. His signature, his handwriting, specifying, making it look natural. He's finished." Nathan felt a weight lifting. 3 years of questions finally answered. Justice within reach. "What about my wife's case?" Jack nodded, his expression softening. "Vega's provided details in exchange for consideration at sentencing. Specific methods, locations, payments received. We're reopening Eleanor's case formally tomorrow morning. It won't bring her back, Nathan, but it will set the record straight." The vindication should have felt triumphant. Instead, Nathan experienced a quiet sense of closure. Not the burning satisfaction he'd imagined, but something gentler. Eleanor deserved the truth. Sophie deserved to know her mother hadn't died by random chance. And Nathan himself deserved freedom from the question that had haunted him for 3 years. When they finally left the FBI office, dawn was breaking over the city. Nathan drove Olivia back to her building, where enhanced security protocols had been implemented overnight. In the quiet of the car, exhaustion settling over them both, she turned to him. "What happens now?" she asked, the question encompassing more than just the immediate future. Nathan considered all the possibilities unfolding before them. "We rebuild. We move forward. Together." The weeks that followed brought sweeping changes at Cartwright Industries. The board faced a reckoning as the full extent of the conspiracy came to light. How had they missed such systematic theft? What did their failures say about their oversight responsibilities? The power dynamic shifted irrevocably as Olivia implemented transparency measures and restructured the company's leadership. Nathan's appointment as director of security became official, complete with an office on the executive floor and a team of security professionals reporting directly to him. His first priorities were closing the vulnerabilities David and Richard had exploited and establishing protocols that would prevent similar breaches in the future. The media storm surrounding the arrests eventually quieted as newer scandals captured public attention. Richard and David both accepted plea deals, 25 years for Richard, 18 for David, avoiding the public spectacle of trials but ensuring they'd spend significant time in federal prison. Marcus Vega received a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation, providing crucial evidence that allowed prosecutors to close not only Eleanor's case, but 3 other unsolved murders connected to the embezzlement scheme. 3 months after David's arrest, Nathan sat in his new office reviewing security footage. A movement alert had triggered the system at 3:17 a.m., probably nothing, but protocol demanded verification. He clicked through camera feeds systematically, finding nothing until he reached the executive parking level. A figure in maintenance coveralls had approached Olivia's reserved space, bent near the wheel of her car, then departed quickly. Nathan zoomed in, enhanced the grainy image. The quality was poor, but something about the man's movements raised alarm bells. He captured still frames, sent them to the forensic team for analysis, then called the garage security office. Ms. Cartwright's vehicle needs to be inspected immediately. Possible tampering. Full mechanical check, undercarriage, electronics. No one drives it until cleared. Within 30 minutes, the security team discovered a tracking device attached to Olivia's car, professional grade, military spec, designed for long-term surveillance. Nathan ordered a sweep of all executive vehicles, Olivia's apartment, even his own car. Nothing more was found, but the isolated tracker was concerning. Someone was watching, waiting, gathering intelligence. The envelope arrived at Nathan's apartment that evening. Plain white, no return address, delivered by courier who claimed it was from an admirer. Inside, Nathan found a single photograph. Richard Bartlett and David Sutton at a restaurant table with a third man whose face wasn't visible. The date stamp indicated it was taken 2 years earlier. On the back, written in block letters, Richard Bartlett wasn't working alone. We're still watching. Nathan called Jack immediately, initiated security protocols for Sophie and Olivia, began the process of relocating to a safe house until the threat could be assessed. The machinery of protection activated with practiced efficiency. The safe house was a brownstone in Brooklyn, unassuming from the outside but equipped with state-of-the-art security systems and a team of FBI agents posing as neighbors. Sophie thought it was an adventure, especially when Olivia joined them, bringing board games and helping with homework during the day, while Nathan and Jack worked to identify their mysterious watcher. The break came on the third day. Facial recognition software matched a partial reflection in the restaurant window from the photograph. Senator William Hargrove, chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee and an outspoken supporter of military technology investments. Jack laid out the connections on a secure whiteboard. Cartwright Industries had numerous defense contracts. The embezzled $50 million had funded a network of shell companies that made strategic investments in military suppliers. Those companies then received preferential treatment in contract awards, with kickbacks flowing back to the original investors through untraceable channels. It's bigger than corporate theft, Jack concluded. This is public corruption at the highest levels. Richard and David were just cogs in a machine that's been operating for decades. Nathan studied the evidence, the familiar cold certainty settling in his stomach. This explains why they were so desperate to eliminate witnesses. It's not just about money, it's about power. The FBI moved on Senator Hargrove with surgical precision. A pre-dawn raid on his Georgetown mansion yielded documents connecting him to Richard and David, along with evidence implicating 3 other senators, a deputy secretary of defense, and 7 corporate executives. The conspiracy had tentacles reaching into every branch of government involved in military procurement. The news broke like a thunderclap, dominating headlines nationwide. Defense corruption ring exposed, the New York Times declared, calling it the most significant public corruption case since Watergate. Olivia's company, having cooperated foully with investigators, emerged as a victim rather than a participant. Her decisive leadership during the crisis burnished her reputation, stock prices rebounding to pre-scandal levels within weeks. 1 month after the arrests, with the immediate danger neutralized, they returned to their normal lives, or rather to the new normal they were creating together. Nathan's apartment became their primary residence, centrally located between Sophie's school, Olivia's office, and Nathan's security team headquarters. The arrangement began as a practical consideration, but evolved naturally into something more permanent. They celebrated Sophie's 80th birthday with a party at the American Museum of Natural History, 6 of her friends from school creating cheerful chaos among the dinosaur exhibits. Nathan watched his daughter explaining fossil facts to Olivia, who listened with genuine interest, asking questions that delighted the newly minted 8-year-old expert. The sight filled him with a contentment he hadn't expected to feel again after Eleanor's death. Not replacement, but renewal. A different kind of happiness, no less real for being unexpected. Later that evening, after Sophie had fallen asleep surrounded by new books and toys, Nathan and Olivia sat on the small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine in the comfortable silence of mutual understanding. Sophie asked if you were my girlfriend, Nathan said finally, the admission pulling a laugh from Olivia. What did you tell her? That it's complicated, that grown-ups sometimes take time to figure things out, that you're important to me, and that's what matters. Olivia considered this, turning the wine glass between her fingers. Good answer. Honest without oversimplifying. She seems okay with ambiguity. Nathan nodded, thinking of his perceptive daughter who noticed everything and formed conclusions that often surprised adults with their insight. She says you make me smile more, that you don't make my forehead wrinkle like work does. Olivia's laughter drifted into the night air, genuine and unguarded. High praise from an 8-year-old. I'll add it to my resume. Reduces forehead wrinkles in security directors. They fell silent again, comfortable in the absence of words. After a while, Olivia spoke, her voice softer than usual. I've been thinking about us, about what we're building here. Nathan turned to her, caught by the seriousness in her tone. 3 months ago, I was just trying to survive, Olivia continued. Running my father's company because I had to, not because I wanted to. Trying to be him instead of myself. And now, she gestured at the apartment, at the evidence of shared lives beginning to intertwine. Now I'm choosing something. Someone. Nathan reached across the small table between them, took her hand. I spent 3 years looking backward, trying to solve a mystery instead of building a future. Sophie deserved better than half my attention. I deserved better. They'd never been explicit about what was developing between them. Had never needed to be. It had evolved naturally through crisis and calm, through danger and mundane everyday moments. The transition from allies to friends to something more had happened so gradually that naming it seemed almost unnecessary. But some things needed to be said aloud, not just understood silently. Nathan took a breath, made the choice. I love you, not because you saved me or I saved you, not because of everything we've been through, but because of who you are, who we are together. Olivia's smile in the dim light of the balcony held none of her CEO polish, none of her public persona's careful control. It was real and vulnerable and certain all at once. I love you too. The words simple but transformative. 6 months after David's arrest, they gathered in the federal courthouse to witness the sentencing of Senator Hargrove. The corruption case had expanded to include 32 defendants across government and industry, with charges ranging from fraud to money laundering to conspiracy to commit murder. The senator received a 30-year sentence, effectively a life term for a man his age. As they left the courthouse, a reporter approached, microphone extended. Ms. Cartwright, how does it feel to see justice served? Olivia considered the question, her hand steady in Nathan's. Justice doesn't bring back those we've lost, but it honors them. My father would be proud of what we've uncovered, proud of the changes we're making to ensure this kind of corruption can't take root again. The reporter glanced at Nathan. And you, Mr. Hayes? After learning your wife's death was connected to this conspiracy? Nathan looked at Sophie, waiting patiently by the car with Olivia's assistant, then back at the reporter. My wife believed in doing what's right, no matter Today's verdict honors that belief. But more importantly, we're building something new from what they tried to destroy. That's the real victory. 1 year to the day after Nathan had kissed Olivia to save her life at the charity gala, they returned to the same hotel ballroom, this time as co-chairs of the Thomas Cartwright Foundation for Corporate Ethics. The organization, funded by Olivia and supported by industry leaders committed to transparency, had already established whistleblower protection programs at 20 major corporations and was developing ethics curriculum for business schools nationwide. Sophie attended as a special guest, wearing a purple dress she'd selected herself and taking her duties as junior ambassador very seriously. She'd grown an inch taller in the past year, had lost 2 teeth, and had decided she wanted to be a judge when she grew up, because they make the bad guys pay for what they did. As the evening drew to a close, Nathan found himself standing in nearly the same spot he'd occupied a year earlier, watching Olivia move through the crowd. The difference was, this time she wasn't alone in a sea of strangers and potential threats. She was surrounded by allies, by a network of people committed to the same vision of corporate responsibility. And when she looked across the room at him, there was no professional distance, no employer-employee dynamic, just the recognition between two people who had chosen each other. Later, in the quiet of their home, the brownstone they'd purchased together, renovated to accommodate Sophie's growing collection of books, Olivia's need for a home office, and Nathan's security requirements, they stood in the kitchen making tea before bed. One year, Nathan observed, from poisoned champagne to corporate ethics foundation, from driver and CEO to this. He gestured at the evidence of their shared life, family photos on the refrigerator, Sophie's homework spread across the dining table, the calendar on the wall marked with all three of their schedules. Olivia leaned against the counter, studying him. Would you change anything if you could go back to that night, knowing what you know now? Nathan considered the question, the journey from that moment to this one. All the danger, all the revelations, all the healing. No, he decided, not a single thing, even the poison. Olivia crossed the kitchen, wrapped her arms around his waist, rested her head against his chest. The simple intimacy of the gesture still surprised him sometimes, that they had found this after everything, that second chances actually existed. I drink to that, but I think I'll pass on the champagne. Nathan laughed, the sound unreserved and genuine. A year ago, he wouldn't have thought it possible to feel this kind of contentment again. Had forgotten what it was like to look forward rather than backward, to build rather than investigate, to love without reservation or fear. The journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, raising Sophie, running the foundation, maintaining the delicate balance between security and openness. But they would face those challenges together, step by step, not as survivors of a shared trauma, but as partners in a shared life. As they moved through their evening routine, checking locks, turning off lights, looking in on Sophie already asleep with a book still open beside her, Nathan felt the quiet certainty of being exactly where he was meant to be, with the people he was meant to be with, not because fate or circumstance had thrown them together, but because they had chosen each other, chosen to trust, to risk, to build something lasting from the broken pieces of what came before. In the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered.